Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys a re-review of the Zeus Toys oversized and enhanced version of Transformers Studio Series Dark of the Moon Shockwave. Now the reasoning behind why I'm taking a second look at this figure is because when I originally reviewed it back in 2020, I thought that I was pretty harsh, and I have just recently taken a look at the Bingo Toys Shockwave, and it did make me go back and actually take a look at some of the previous third-party releases of the character. And when I did watch my review, whilst I do still think that all of my thoughts and my opinions in regards to the overall build quality of this guy are more than certainly justified, Zeus Toys did in fact actually come out and give replacement pieces for every single version of this guy that did come with broken hips. And I've got to give credit where it's due. 9 times out of 10, these third-party companies don't really usually tend to recognize their mistakes, but Zeus Toys did, so I thought that I would give this guy another shot. I did in fact only just recently actually swap out some of those components of which came damaged when I first got my figure, and I've got to be honest and say they truly do make all of the difference. On paper, this figure was an absolute dream item for me. When I was 10 or 11 years old, I absolutely wanted nothing more in the world than a massive version of Shockwave, and this figure certainly granted my wish. The Studio Series version is awesome, super accurate, really poseable, but it just wasn't as big as I would truly like Shockwave to be within my collection. So Zeus Toys really did do something special here, and this guy isn't just a straight up KO. He's not just an upscale, he has in fact actually got quite a few new elements actually packed into him, so I thought I'd give him a second shot. I did in fact actually pick this guy up over at Shozi Store back in 2020, and very recently they have indeed restocked this guy, and I do believe that the running change will in fact actually have the brand new hips already implemented. But for those of you who do still find to have an issue with this guy, you can simply just submit a replacement parts request, and Shozi are honestly so on the ball. They're probably one of the best companies that I've ever dealt with in regards to breakages, but I'm pretty certain that almost 2 years after my original review, Zeus Toys have now already in fact actually fixed the issue first time round. So I will drop a link down in the description box below to Shozi's listing of this guy if you still wish to in fact actually pick him up. And my goodness, I absolutely stand by what I mentioned at the beginning portion of this review. This guy looks absolutely incredible. They truly did a fantastic job. We'll start off firstly by taking a look here at Shockwave's head sculpt. Honestly, the best recreation of Dark of the Moon Shockwave yet, in my opinion. This just looks so insane. The attention to detail is remarkable, and not to mention this guy has in fact actually been painted super nicely, especially for a product of which I believe is originally produced by Black Mamba. You can see we've got overall this super awesome metallic purple flake to the actual plastic. We've got some really nice dry brushing going on just to pick out some of the sharper details of the sculpt, and one thing that I absolutely love about this particular head sculpt is that the teeth, or the mandibles, are in fact fully sculpted and are indeed separate from the underneath component. You can see there that just looks so damn awesome. Optimus, meet ya. And the articulation in the head allows you to get him into pretty much any pose you want. Honestly, a superb looking head sculpt where that's concerned. And this guy, of course, does in fact actually have LEDs. So as we push this button here on the back, you can see the eye will illuminate an incredibly piercing red, which truly does bring this character to life, in my opinion. We'll turn this off here for the review, but you can see that as we turn our attention to the torso region of Shockwave, those ribs there look incredible. Once again, I love how they are in fact a separate sculpt from the underneath components. It really does give you this almost multi-layered effect to Shockwave, and just brings out some of those details which I personally thought went missed on that original Studio Series version. We do in fact get completely brand new remolded shoulders, so once again we've got a double layer going on here. We've got the purple armor and then this almost endoskeleton underneath. The same can also be applied here for the biceps, and the forearm just looks so awesome. And we do in fact actually get a brand new blade for Shockwave, completely filled out unlike the SS version, painted and sculpted so damn nicely, and you could just see the attention to detail to these fingers is just sublime. They look exactly how they appeared on screen. Really awesome sculpt work, and once again that paintwork there is phenomenal. And then as we turn our attention here to the massive arm cannon, oh my goodness, honestly this character was such a waste in Transformers Dark of the Moon. If he were to have blasted this at the Autobots, he probably would have vaporized them. This thing is enormous, almost too big, and sadly the actual shoulder itself can't really support the weight of that, but we'll touch base more with that in just a second. But you can see that metallic dry brushing effect just looks insane. We have in fact actually got solid hard plastic here for the tip of the blaster, and you can see that the actual hose itself too is plastic with all of these individual segments of which are encased via a ball joint, which I personally am a huge fan of. Now, not only did they of course tweak some elements here at the top, but they also did here for the legs. So unlike the Studio Series version, these are not just an upscale of the Revenge of the Fallen Megatron hips, these are completely brand new, and once again look so accurate to the movie. So you can see here that thigh armor just looks really awesome, completely painted once more. And then as we turn our attention down to the legs of Shockwave, incredibly thick, robust, and insanely menacing looking, especially where these spikes are concerned for the bottom of the feet. I just think this overall is such an awesome piece. And even as we flip our attention here to the back of Shockwave, we do in fact actually get these almost turbine sections, which for those of you who have played the Dark of the Moon video game will in fact know that these are indeed Shockwave's weak spot. You do in fact actually have to blast or slash these in order to essentially defeat Shockwave, as I believe these do in fact actually power up the arm cannon. Now, in regards to articulation, it's very well done. In particular would be where the head is concerned. So we get a ball joint here which can look up, down, tilt side to side, of course, rotate left to right to pretty much any angle that you want. But due to transformation, we also do get two hinge joints here at the neck, which just allows you to literally get this head into any position. Here for the arms, we do in fact get ratchet joints, a really nice ratchet joint here for this side. Sadly, this one isn't as tight as maybe I would like. It can't really hold the weight of the fusion cannon, but you can see here on camera it is in fact actually doing a fine job. So perhaps it can. And there you go, see it does droop every so often, but it can also hinge out to the sides. We do get a rotation here at the bicep. One thing that I would in fact actually mention is that if you do decide to bend the elbow, just be cautious if you are swiveling this joint, as of course, considering these are now separate pieces, this section can in fact actually become wedged on this and of course apply unnecessary pressure. One area of which they didn't tweak would be the lack of waist swivel. Honestly, that would have just been the icing on the cake for me. You can't in fact actually get this guy and of course rotate at the waist. Not a major deal breaker, but it's definitely something I would have liked to have seen. Here on this arm, of course, we get the same bicep rotation, but we do in fact actually get fully individually articulated fingers. They're on ball joints here at the base and a hinge joint here at the knuckle, which is just insane. And then here for the notorious or infamous hips, these are in fact this time round, considering I have swapped them out, actually really sturdy. I haven't had any stress marks or breakages so far, so I am in fact hoping that that issue is now completely abolished for this version. And if it is, then honestly this is a solid almost 10 out of 10 third party piece in my opinion. But the legs can ratchet forwards that far, which is fantastic. Sadly, the ratchet joints aren't the tightest, but honestly I'm not complaining at all, especially if it does in fact actually prevent them from breaking or shearing clean off like my original version. They can of course hinge back that far. Ratchet joint there out to the side, as well as a rotation here at the thigh. We do in fact actually get a supreme ratchet joint here at the knee, which can bend slightly past 90 despite it only being on a single hinge joint, and the knee pad too can also hinge back and forth to conceal that joint, or if you wish to pose him in this way. And then finally, as we turn our attention here down to the foot, much like the Studio Series version, this can pivot forwards and backwards, rock side to side to a fantastic degree, and these spikes can also actually shift forwards. One thing I would mention, however, is that I would have loved to have seen maybe the incorporation of a ratchet joint into these sections, as considering this entire ribcage piece is made out of die cast, and of course the top section does house the cannon, it does make him quite top heavy, and obviously with these being just on friction hinges, it does make him have a tendency, sadly, to slightly fall forward or fall backwards. Now, before we proceed to wrap with the robot mode, in addition to having an LED in the eye, we also do have one here for the blaster. So we just toggle this switch and you can see we've got some really nice detail. You can have Shockwave firing at Optimus, meet ya, Optimus, and blasting away at the Autobots. Or we can in fact actually also spin our attention here to the back, and these turbines are in fact detachable, which is a really nice touch. So we can just pop those off, and you can see how we also do have a switch here on the back that, when toggled, will in fact also illuminate these. Now all of them light up, so I'll just very quickly do that and show it off for you guys. So we can just have all of these sections here at the back of Shockwave fully illuminated. It does appear as if though this one's died on me, but it does also light up. So that too is also a really lovely touch, and to me it's just something that they didn't have to do, especially considering that it is on the back, and it just goes to show how much of this is in fact actually retooled and not just upscaled from the Hasbro Studio Series offering. First up for comparisons, we've got the Zeus Toys Shockwave compared next to the Black Mamba oversized Dark of the Moon movie masterpiece-esque Optimus Prime, and I actually think these two scale really nicely with one another. For those of you who own this DOTM Prime, you'll know that he's pretty big when in comparison to the original movie masterpiece offering, and personally, I actually think this is near enough dead on to what we saw in the movie. Shockwave was in fact actually slightly bigger than Prime, and I believe even bigger than the Dark of the Moon Megatron. Here is the Studio Series Leader Class Shockwave compared next to the enormous Zeus Toys offering, and you can see that the Leader Class version looks tiny in comparison, and that's actually a pretty decently sized figure, so it really does just go to show how enormous this piece truly is. And finally, here we have both versions of live action movie Shockwave compared next to one another. The Zeus Toys Dark of the Moon Shockwave and the Bingo Toys Bumblebee movie Shockwave. And that figure was in fact actually really big, but you can see Zeus Toys does in fact actually tower over the Bingo Toys offering, and something which I find actually pretty insane is despite both of these being based on their live action movie appearances, they are in fact very, very different designs. I absolutely love what Travis Knight did with the B-movie Shockwave, but I've got to give it props to Michael Bay. That Dark of the Moon Shockwave is an absolute beast, and honestly, if I saw him coming towards me, I definitely know which direction I would be running in, and it would not be towards this guy at all. So turning to transformation for this Zeus Toys Shockwave, I shall in fact very briefly skim through it, especially considering that it is merely the exact same transformation that we saw from the Studio Series offering. So to begin with, what I personally like to do is just come here to the shoulders and disengage those just like so. We can then spin our attention here to the back and essentially just disengage all of that and set it off to the side. We can take Shockwave's head and tilt this entire piece up, a very simplistic conversion. What we then of course have to do is disengage the hips from the torso. Now personally, I would recommend bringing in a screwdriver, just as it's so much easier to in fact actually insert that into this hollow cavity and pry the joint out instead of actually grabbing the hip and pulling it out. Whilst I do think the new hip joints would in fact actually withstand the pressure, I just don't want to take any risks at all. So definitely just take something like this, port it into this tiny little hollow space, and you can see it literally takes no effort at all to in fact actually disengage that. So just hinge that out like so. Of course, come here to this side and you guys guessed it, repeat the exact same process. So just hinge this section out as well, just like so. And then what we can proceed to do is basically flip this here all the way up, and you can see how we've got a slot that will in fact be fulfilled via this tab. So just snap that in there. Of course, come to this side and repeat the same process. So just snap that section in. I will indeed lower the camera so that we can now focus on Shockwave on the ground. And literally picking up where we left off, you're going to want to take these feet here and just essentially extend these entire regions here forwards. So rotate this heel spur here out to the side, bring this like so, and then of course just rotate that around. Of course, come to this side and repeat the same process. So fold the heel spur out to the side, and then just proceed to extend all of this here in upon itself. And with the head, this will essentially just sort of sit in the center, much like Revenge of the Fallen Megatron, and then these portions would basically just sort of cover the front portion there of Shockwave's face. We can then come here to the back. You're going to want to take these shoulders and lock them there into place, much like the original version. You can see how we've got a slot here on the underside that will peg there into this tab. So if I just remove the arm blade, as this time round it is in fact designed to port here into the top, we can just snap that in there. Of course, come to this side and repeat the same process. But before we do that, however, as we flip here to the back, you can see we've got a tab that will in fact peg here into this port. So just snap that section in just like so, which will then in fact actually allow you to tab all of this in slightly easier. Just ensure that hose is out of the way. So snap that in there. Of course, flip to this side, snap that in there once again, and then here for the back you can see we've got two tabs that will peg here into these slots. Personally, I don't like to force it, but it does tab in there pretty securely. Just orientate those turbines accordingly. And that is pretty much the Zeus Toys Shockwave fully transformed up into Shockwave's Cybertronian tank mode. The exact same alt mode that we saw from the original Dark of the Moon Voyager, and of course a more or less identical vehicle mode to what we saw from the Studio Series offering. So I won't in fact actually spend too long taking a look at this, but you can once again see that amazing metallic purple paint effect that we've got going on. It looks awesome. I love the dry brushing here at the front of the cannon. The silver details look wicked. And to be honest, as abstract as this is for an actual almost tank mode, I definitely personally do think it does resemble a Cybertronian alt form. I can definitely imagine Shockwave rolling around on Cybertron, literally crushing over the dead bodies of Autobots, and overall, I think it's an equally as badass looking tank mode to, of course, accommodate a wicked looking robot mode. And so that was my re-review on the Zeus Toys Transformers Dark of the Moon Shockwave. Overall, as far as the actual figure is concerned, visual-wise, it is by far the best looking DOTM Shockwave that I personally have ever seen. The scale alone demands so much shelf presence. Honestly, it's probably one of the most epic looking third-party pieces I own in the entire collection. That is also down to the simple fact that Shockwave's design from Transformers 3 was a beast. Honestly, it's probably one of the most aggressive, vicious looking Decepticons that came out of the entire Bayverse, and personally I've always had a massive soft spot for it. I think it is a really cool redesign. This guy of course does take a lot of the design and of course engineering from the Hasbro offering, but surprisingly does also incorporate quite a few new elements, such as I would say the entire exterior armor, those biceps, the ribs, the head sculpt in particular is all completely brand new, and as showcased in the review, the hips too are also a complete brand new reworking and are not simply just a reuse of the Revenge of the Fallen Megatron hips. This guy also in fact comes with a brand new blade. I'm willing to bet that perhaps 85% of the robot mode was completely remolded by Zeus Toys. Honestly, they did in fact actually do quite an extensive retool on this guy, which is very surprising for an upscale. Usually they just tend to literally carbon copy the Hasbro offering, but this guy does in fact actually have quite a few new components. The articulated fingers in the hands, the new head sculpt of course to accommodate the LEDs, the entire back section of course has also been reworked in order to incorporate LEDs into the turbines, and the same can also be said for the actual arm cannon itself. That too has also been remolded in order to in fact actually house an LED in the front. In terms of build quality, considering now that I do in fact actually have the replacement pieces installed, so far I have found no issues with this guy at all. I did in fact actually install the new components 2 days ago, and I would say that I've messed around with this guy more in 2 days than the nearly 2 years that I have in fact actually owned him. So for those of you who are looking to add this guy to the collection and maybe you're slightly hesitant to pick it up due to the previous reports of breaking, I honestly would say go for it. At the end of the day, Shozi can in fact actually provide you completely with replacement parts like they were able to do here for me. It's very easy to replace those pieces if they do become broken, and I'm pretty convinced that they have now rectified the issue, and all future releases of this guy will already come with the new reinforced plastic hips. So it really shouldn't be an issue going forward. If you do so happen to get the first production run and they do break, once again just submit a replacement parts request from Shozi and they'll be able to sort you out, no problem at all. I've had no issue in getting replacement pieces from them, and as mentioned beforehand, they are by far one of the best stores that I personally have had to deal with in regards to breakages and returns. I would really love to know what your thoughts are on this particular figure. Is it one that you own in the collection? If you do own it, did you experience any breakages yourself? Or after this review, are you slightly more enticed to in fact actually pick this guy up, considering that they now more or less actually solved the issues? I would love to hear your opinions and thoughts down in the comment section below, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.